All right, guys, what you're going to look at is when you have a quadratic equation, like y equals x squared plus 3x plus 2. How can we find the zeros? So we're going to find what they call the zeros. Another word for it is roots or roots. I call them the x-intercepts. So these three words mean the same. A lot of times in math, and we know that they're the x-intercepts, but we will actually call them the zeros or the roots. And the reason that they do that, I have a little picture here. The reason that they do that is it's where they cross the x-axis. So if something crosses the x-axis here, right here, this is the root, like a tree. So the root is where it would cross the x-axis. So if I just look at this one here, this is a root and this is a root. So we can call them roots, or we can call them zeros, or what we've been talking about is they are also called x-intercepts. Okay, so they're the x-intercepts, the zeros are the roots. I think most your teachers next year will call them the zeros, but just know that there's more than one name for them. So we're going to figure out how to find those x-intercepts or roots or zeros. And what we do is we have to use that skill called factoring. Okay, and so we talked about this for the Iowa assessment. So when I factor, I get a 2, and I want things that add up to 3, and they're both positive. So factors of 2 are 2 times 1, because 2 times 1 is 3. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So I'm going to write my factors are going to be x plus 2 and x plus 1, and your order does not matter. Now we're going to go back to this word zeros. So the reason that they call them zeros is in order to find these x-intercepts, we actually take our equation and we set it equal to 0. That's why they call them zeros or roots, because we're taking our y and we're making our y equal 0. So that's why we call them zeros. Now this is a little rule in math, and I don't know if you've learned this rule yet, but do you see how these two are multiplied? So to find my x-intercepts or my zeros, I take each piece. So here's one piece, and I set it equal to 0. And then I take this piece, and I set it equal to 0. And then I solve. Well, 0, if I minus 2, 0 minus 2 is negative 2. And here, I'm going to subtract 1, so it's negative 1. So negative 2 and negative 1 are my zeros. So what that means is if I was going to graph this, here's this parabola. My zeros are at negative 2, right here, and negative 1, right here. I also know that my y-intercept is at 2, which means that my vertex is probably down here somewhere, which we're not going to do all of that right now, but we'll look at it. So this graph should look something like this. So these are the zeros. These are the answers that you found. All right, so we're going to try another one. Let's have y equals x squared minus 2x minus 15. So if they ask you to find the zeros or the roots, what you have to remember is you want to factor. So I'm going to put in negative 15 and negative 2. My multiples of negative 15, or my factors, would be 5 and 3. And this is negative, so it would be negative 5 and positive 3. So then I get y equals x minus 5, x plus 3. And now to find the zeros, so I'm going to find the zeros, which means I have to let y equal 0. X minus 5, and then times x plus 3. What we're going to do then is that new little rule. We're going to take each one and set it equal to 0. And then this one, x plus 3 equals 0. And you just do the opposite. So if it's minus 5, it's going to be plus 5. So one of my answers is positive 5. This would be minus 3. So my other 0 is negative 3. So if I was going to graph, oh boy, here goes my pen again. So if I was going to graph, I could get those values. And you're going to have to pause for a second. Okay, so those are my zeros. So if I look at the graph at positive 5, there's an x-intercept or a 0 or a root. And at negative 3, there is a 0. I know by looking at this that my y-intercept is way down here at like negative 15. So that means my parabola, well, if I do this real quick, I think my vertex is at 1. So my parabola probably looks something like this. And that's what it would be. So what you're going to do today is you're going to find the zeros. We might do a couple where you put everything together, but mostly you're going to find the zeros. Let's try one more normal one, and then I got to show you a couple special cases. So x squared, oh, let's not do that. Let's do negative x squared. Minus 3x plus 4. So what we have been learning is if this is negative, that means this one opens down. And we can still do this the same way. So I set this equal to 0 because I'm looking for the zeros. That's my goal today, is to find the zeros or the x-intercepts. Now do you see how there's a negative here? What I do is I put negative 1 and then a parenthesis. And when I put this negative 1 outside, it's going to change all of these. So this one changes to positive and a positive, but that means this one would change to a negative. Okay, now 0 divided by negative 1 is just 0. So now I can kind of get rid of it and do my normal stuff. So I make my x for my factors. I had negative 4 and positive 3. So it's 1 times 4. And if this one is negative, so then I get x minus 1, x plus 4, because it's positive 4. And then I set them equal to 0, each one by itself. So I get 1 is a 0, and I get negative 4 is a 0. So then I graph them. 1 is here, right here, and negative 4 is right here. Now I'm just going to estimate because I know this one opens down, so this probably looks something like this. It's just an estimate. Okay, but these are the zeros, the x-intercepts. Oh, I do know that the y-intercept is 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. So it looks something like that. So that's a special case. So if this is negative, you need to take out a negative 1 and change all of these signs, and then you factor. Okay, another special thing that happens, and this happens in Algebra 2 a lot, and we'll look at it a little bit, is sometimes you get something that you can't factor. So if I look at this and I say, okay guys, you find the zeros, and you put 3 here and you put 7 here, there's no answers. So for right now, we're just going to say this one that you can't do. Let's just say no zeros. This one has no zeros because I don't know what they are because I can't do them. We will look at a different way later on, but for right now, we're just going to say no zeros. So sometimes you have things that you cannot factor. And if you cannot factor, then you'll just tell me no zeros for right now. And we'll talk about that later. Okay, there's one more special case I want to show you. And this one is really special. Let's say you get y equals x squared minus 16. Okay, so we go to factor, because Mrs. Elgert said we're going to find the zeros. So we're going to factor. So we're going to say y equals, well, factors of negative 16 that add up to, there's no b, so they add up to 0. So I could do 8 and 2. but they don't give me 0. I could do 16 and 1, but they don't give me 0. So what I need is 4 and 4, because I could do a positive 4 and a negative 4. Because 4 and negative 4 give me 0, and 4 times 4 is negative 16. So I'm going to get x plus 4, x minus 4. And then we're finding the zeros. So 0 equals x plus 4 times x minus 4. And then we set each one equal to 0 by itself. So there's this one, and then this one, x minus 4 equals 0. So this one we get positive 4, and this one we get negative 4. So these are your zeros. That's your answer for today. But just to show you what that looks like, at positive 4, there's a 0. At negative 4, there's a 0. We know that the y-intercept is negative 16. So like way down here, here's negative 16. This parabola looks like this. There you go. That is what you're going to do. Please, I'm not here, so if you can help each other without just copying, that would be awesome. You need to get the paper from the substitute teacher. Okay, have a good day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.